Hey guys, Haikrazon here with another video series we're going to be doing where we want to take 5 different platinum trophies ranging from beginner to intermediate, way up to master, hard, however you want to look at it. My editor and I actually went over a bunch of criteria for this stuff, from time efficiency, actual game difficulty, mechanics, glitches and exploits, multiple playthroughs, difficulty playthroughs, all sorts of stuff. We tried to cover everything and really nail down where these games land. So hopefully we can get some people, some new trophy hunters or some veteran hunters, some new ideas of what kind of platinums to go after and go from there. So let's finish this boring ass intro and let's do it. We're going to be starting off pretty easy here, and by that I don't mean those BS clicker games. We're actually going to be putting number 1 as the Stanley Parable. So the Stanley Parable is a pretty well-known indie title known for its writing and its comedy. And to be completely honest, it's really just a walking sim, which isn't a bad thing by any means. This gives the devs an opportunity to really drive home the writing, the dialogue, the story, you name it, which in this case is incredible and hilarious, worth playing for that alone. In terms of actually getting the platinum, yeah, it's pretty easy. I wouldn't say it's straightforward though. There are various endings and odd orders to do certain things in, but it is still just a walking sim that can be completed in roughly like 3 to 6 hours or so, but there are some pretty silly trophies that actually make this a little odd. The primary one being a trophy that requires you to leave the game running for 24 hours. You don't actually need to do anything with this time and you can easily just leave it up, but that technically does put the plat time up to like almost 30 hours. Another odd one that is really just a bit inconvenient and again really silly actually requires you to not play the game for 10 years and then come back to it. Of course we're just gonna mess with the console clock for this, but definitely worth mentioning again just because it's so kinda out there. All in though, it's easy, you'll technically have it done in like a day or two, and the hilarious writing and interactions with the narrator definitely makes it an easy platinum worth going for. Moving on to the second one is Little Nightmares 2. Little Nightmares 2 is probably one of my more enjoyed indie titles in the past years, and it was done so well. It's creepy, and I mean really creepy. The level design at its base is great, and boy did it have a great story for being so quietly told. The first one is great too, but it doesn't have a platinum trophy unfortunately. When talking about time and effort required to get the platinum, there's a good bit more involved here, and that's where this tier will really change up a bit. Requiring collectibles or guides for collectibles, puzzles, death states, and things like that. Still easy and straightforward, but a bit more involved. There are a couple types of collectibles to look out for, as well as some chapter-specific trophies. I do recommend using a guide just to knock everything out in one playthrough, but it does have chapter select, so you can do a blind playthrough and just go back for everything too if that's your preference. I definitely wouldn't call the game hard or challenging by any means, but there actually were some really tricky bits, whether it's just figuring out a puzzle or surviving the goddamn mannequins. I actually had to retry that part several times, but it is still pretty easy overall. This one will probably clock you in around 6 hours or so, and it's a really solid one to go for without much of a commitment. Alright, middle of the road here, number 3 is going to be Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. Tiny Tina's. This is going to be a really solid example of what's going to land in the middle of the road for this series. A fair amount of content to blow through, plenty of optional questing and bossing, a generous dose of freedom, and a pretty much just do everything take on the trophy list. These are my favorite types of trophy lists because it's not about doing things in a specific way or forcing you to play a way that you wouldn't normally play. For the most part at least. And you don't even actually have to do everything. They just want you to experience all the content they worked on making for us. Tiny Tina's is the first AAA title I'm talking about, so I'm sure everybody is pretty damn familiar with what it is. The fact that they took Borderlands formula and just turned it into D&D based on one of the expansions really worked. They changed enough to make it actually feel different. Like, one of my biggest concerns going in was the spells replacing the grenades. I thought they were just going to be like the grenades, but named spell things. But nope, way different and actually very creative and unique. And the builds ended up feeling like mega broken God of Destruction status, which is something I freaking love in games. Again, most of the trophies are just do everything with some odds and ends. However, maxing out your inventory slots does take an absurd amount of money. It's highly recommended to dupe your earnings to speed this up. I get it if you don't want to use exploits towards a plat, but this money making takes so freaking long that you'll be done with every other trophy while you're still working on this one. Another one to mention, getting to Chaos 20 isn't crazy hard or anything, but you either want to run it in co-op or you absolutely are going to need a fully synergized build to knock it out. At least without frustration. I ran the whole game in co-op except for the Chaos Chambers, which is where I went with a Graveboard, Spore Warden pet build, and I didn't struggle with anything much except the time it actually takes to do 20 runs. A little bit on the tedious side. All in, you're looking at probably about 40 to 60 hours. Co-op can speed this up if you got some buddies willing to play it with you, but outside of that, pretty traditional list as a whole, but adding in a good bit of fun challenge with an emphasis on exploring the whole game. Definitely a great plat to pick up with a bit more of a commitment. Number 4, little bit of a big deal, right? Elden Ring. Alright. Elden Ring at number 4, what? Trust me, this will make a lot of sense, especially when you see number 5. No, I'm not going to say Elden Ring is easy by any means, but there are several factors that prevent this from being a 5. First off, holy crap, what a masterpiece, right? Let's get that out of the way pretty quick. Every minute of this platinum journey was top tier for me and non-Souls fans alike. So let's talk about the trophy list. So the two biggest things about this, and any Souls game for that matter, is the skill entry requisite and the co-op. We all know the Souls games have this stigma of being incredibly difficult, and they certainly can be. That alone scares off a lot of people from even trying them. Luckily, I think Elden Ring did help get past this, but with plenty of challenges as well. And while From's co-op systems have always been odd yet relatively common practice now, this is integral to the trophies, because the second you add in a partner, the difficulty drops from a 10 to maybe a 5. Aggro trading will make the majority of enemies and even bosses incredibly reasonable fights. Elden Ring kind of addressed this a bit with crazier and more sporadic patterns in their bosses, but getting free shots in on someone that isn't looking is always going to be easier. Even outside of that, this is definitely the easiest of the Souls games, as it only requires one playthrough if you save scum the endings, while every other Souls needs more just for getting the right items. A couple of missable things like bosses, a specific weapon, and a questline for an ending, so you'll have to stay on your toes there. Again though, this is pretty much just do everything for the most part. You actually don't need to do a majority of the extra content like caves and dungeons, but you do have to do all of the relevant lore related stuff with named bosses or unique rewards, things like that. The average time for plat is probably going to land you somewhere in a solid 60 to 80 hour range, but that is so dependent on you as a player with this game. I did a ton of co-op, and I didn't clock my plat until like 110 hours. By far, definitely one of my favorite platinum journeys, and we've all heard this a million times already, but obviously this is a huge recommend. Our first number 5 is actually going to be Smite. Alright, so I don't expect a ton of people to know why this platinum is getting ranked as a 5, but this was a huge deal for me personally when I finally popped this. Smite is a MOBA, which has both positive and negative connotations with it, but regardless, it's a very specific genre that is definitely not near as accessible as something like a shooter or an RPG. There's a humongous learning curve getting started with learning every individual god, which is up to like 121 as of this video, but only mastering 70 is required, which also happens to be the biggest time sink. Learning the mid-game shop and understanding the items is a huge aspect. I probably wasn't even good at this game for a solid year or two, and when you take breaks, you have to relearn with all the balancing. Hell, I'm probably not even good anymore now. To give you an idea, the plat time for this is a minimum of 100 hours. Again, a lot of this comes from mastering 70 gods. You earn XP for gods from time spent playing in the game, regardless of performance, plus a little bit extra if you win. The game does have a lot of double worshipper weekends, which is the experience, or party bonuses and boosters that you can use, which will speed it up, but no matter what you do, mastering 70 gods is going to take a long time. Especially because you also have to get one of those gods up to mastery level 10, which is kind of the max. I'm not going to get into it, but it takes a while. What's good about this though is that it's going to familiarize you with a ton of the characters, and not necessarily how to play them, but how to play against them when they're on the other team, and you at least have a basic idea of what their kit does and how it can be comboed with other gods. This is going to make general playing much easier for you and make attaining some of the other trophies easier as well. I mean, you don't really want to be getting all these trophies with every game being a loss, right? Having a better understanding of the game is going to help with a lot of the various trophies, like 25 games of several different modes, doing certain objectives within time limits, cumulative trophies like kills, assists, objectives, and multi-kills. And on the note of multi-kills, this is actually what made the Platinum take hundreds of hours for me. There's a trophy for getting a pentakill. Not a humongous deal, pentas are awesome and don't happen all the time, but they're not that uncommon. However, there are 3 main modes in Smite. There's a 3v3, so you definitely can't get a penta there since that's 5 kills. There's a 5v5 arena mode, which is mostly just casual, chaotic nonsense. Pentas do happen, but with so much going on, it's hard for one person to get all 5 kills. And lastly, the main mode called Conquest, which is your traditional 3-lane MOBA type gameplay with 5 versus 5. This is where most of them probably happen, but I don't really ever play Conquest because the matches are so long. That was my biggest hurdle, but I played this game for many years just for fun. So once I finally got that, there were 2 trophies remaining, both speed trophies for doing something before a certain time limit. It's nothing crazy or hard, but it's not something that's going to naturally happen either. We had to communicate with the randoms on our team to go for this with us, and it still took us many games to get it, and you only get 1 chance per game. So that's Smite. It's actually my rarest platinum and my rarest trophy in general. Every 5th game on these lists I'll probably go way more in depth on because of how challenging they are, and Smite is definitely the longest time spent on a game before getting the platinum, for me at least. So I already have a few of these planned and scheduled, but I do want to hear some of your hardest platinums in the comments. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss other platinum trophies to go after. Thanks for watching. See you guys on the next one. This is a dog.
Productions.